Hi, friends. This is Sunil Chandy from Food for Thought. Thank you for joining us today on this day, Monday, the day after Mother's Day, and already we have about 13 people who have joined us. Namaste, Betsy. Thank you for being with us. Natalie, good afternoon to you. Meg, how are you? I hope everyone's having a good time as well. And Betsy says, Natalie, hi. And Marcia, hi, hello, how are you? And there's a conversation going on online here. That's our senior warden for you. She starts connecting people with people all over the place. It's great. Anyway, thank you all for joining us today. And we are going to be, today's a great day. It's a day after Mother's Day, and it was sunny before. I'm looking outside, and now it's a little bit overcast, but the weather doesn't affect us, does it? It's the outside environment is not just what keeps us going. And Ben Barber says hello, and so does Mary Bellinger. And we've got this really wonderful community going on together. So thank you all for being with us, and we can all watch each other say hello on the screens as well. It's interesting because I think I was thinking about it. Our guest today again is and she's going to be a continuing guest. It's Sharon Younkin, and she'll be talking with us a little bit later in the show. But one of the things that in our prep for this program that she reminded me of is this idea that we are a community. Even though we're individuals, we are a community, and God calls us to be in a community to help one another. I mean, it's good to have a spiritual experience, but the one thing about it is an individual spiritual experience, because that is our relationship between us and God. But then to share it with others is important. And in the Christian faith, it's what is called for. We take our experiences of God, and then we come back into community, and we have a conversation, a dialogue with other people in the community, and the community is lifted, and we take our experience, and then we see it through the lens of community, and our experience is clarified. The thoughts are made more clear and visible to us, and we help each other in the midst of community. And so it is very important to know that Jesus, when he begins his ministry in the gospel, all the gospel texts, he creates a community, a community of disciples, a community that includes people who have similar experiences to him, but also people who have different experiences. And Jesus, one of the great things about Jesus is that he is very inclusive in his community. He has people from all parts of the country, of his country, and outside of the country. He has Gentile folks who are kind of on the margins, he draws in, helping us to realize that I think what Jesus does, and the church in its early movement helps, it kind of pulls people in and connects them, unifies them, even though they're different, and the difference is important because God comes to us differently sometimes, but it's coming in this community to help the larger community be better. I love that about our church. I mean, I think we'll see that more as every year in the season of Pentecost, in that great day that we celebrate. Pentecost is a day that helps us to celebrate the diversity that we have and the community that we have, the unity in the midst of that diversity. So it's beautiful. I love it. That's one of the things that drew me to the church, or to being a priest. And so, because we are coming from different places, because we are coming from different understandings, it's important to understand how to be a community. Sometimes It's when different people are coming from different experiences, we need to learn how to listen to one another, and to speak with one another with great respect, validating what is present before us without invalidating the person, validating even the feelings that we have, and validating the people and their way of seeing things, because not every way is the same way to see the world, right? Of course. I remember once talking to one of my kids' counselors, actually, and my boys, they either take after, the best parts of the best parts of Simi, and if they take after me in any way, I hope they take more after their mother. But there was a time when I was struggling with one of my kids, and I said to the counselor, I don't understand this. I never had this type of problem. He looks just like me. Yeah, he's my son. This should be easy for him. And the counselor said, he may look like you physically, but he's not you. He's got different talents, a different way of seeing the world. And you could force him to look at your way of looking at the world, but then you would lose a son, because you're going to destroy a part of him, or close off a part of him. And that stuck with me. And so, we're not created the same. We won't see the world the same way. And that's okay. Some of us are gifted in many ways. Some of us are gifted in organization. Some of us are gifted in speaking. Some of us are gifted in bringing people together. And some are gifted in many other ways. The key is to know that, that we don't all have to be like each other. But we're drawn to each other in this community, and we could respect the gifts and then allow this community to grow as we respect one another. I think this is when that Jesus says this wonderful statement. He goes, when 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I will be in the midst of them. For that, what I think he means with that is, when 2 or 3 people in community come together and there is deep listening and deep speaking, God is present. There's a deep exchange of wonderful spiritual insight that helps everyone get better, or find joy or hope, find passion, and find life. Anyway, so today we have Sharon with us, and I'm so happy because this lady is amazing. She's a wonderful gift to our parish, and I am gifted to have her call me as friend. And so, Ben, bring Sharon on board.
Hi, Father Sunil. How are you?
Hi, Sharon. How are you?
Wow. I just have to say, you have so many gems in what you just said.
Well,
I know you'll say that to me and talk about the wisdom I'm sharing, but you said so many things just now that really are so meaningful. Yeah. I mean, I could talk about, I know we talked about, should I respond to some of what you said, do you think? Would that be?
If I think what we do is we maybe this time we'll talk about emotional well-being, neuroscience behind validation. I was trying to go there, but my thoughts go all over the place sometimes.
That's okay. That's okay. I do have to say one thing though. I do have to comment on one thing. I feel moved. Sure. I feel moved to do it. So one of some of the feedback that my daughter gave me is, and she said that, I think that it's really helpful when you share how you use the parts when you share how you've used things. She said the stories essentially. And so and just like your powerful story about the counselor, that's a really powerful story. So you said something about how and you and I were talking a little bit about and versus or, and how that can help with the flexibility of thinking.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
and I wrote down, we can have diversity and unity. We can have both. And I know I'll share just how I've struggled with either or thinking for a long time. So I came from a background where my mother came from a background of privilege, and she was educated during her high school years in Europe. She was the granddaughter of an Episcopal minister. She came from this background of privilege. During the summer, we would go out to Sag Harbor and stay with my grandmother, who lived out there. My father, on the other hand, grew up in the projects. He was a Vietnam veteran. And for many years, I didn't kind of know where I should fit.
Yeah.
And then one day I realized I can be and.
Yeah.
I don't have to fit into one or the other. I can go between both.
Yes.
And so it opened up a whole new world for me to be able to do that. And not only was it something that I felt limited by, it actually was a strength that I had not been aware of. And so sometimes when we stay stuck in our either or, we miss out on what might actually be one of our strengths.
Yeah. I think that's the experience of many people in our world, right? It's not just that they are one or the other. They're in many different communities, right?
Yeah.
And there's such a power in that. There's a freedom in knowing that you don't have to be locked in one particular way of looking at the world, but you could, and there's a creativity that comes out of it, right?
Mm-hmm. There is, yes.
And I could just imagine how that background of finally accepting radical acceptance, as you
yes.
of your two experiences, how that has helped you as a counselor.
Oh, tremendously, because I can relate to a lot of different people, a lot of different experiences.
Yeah.
So I think that and is really, really powerful. And I see, and I guess I'll just say another thing about and then we can transition over to the emotion rate, the validation and neuroscience of emotion regulation. But I see a lot of people getting stuck in the and, like I'm the helper, not that I don't receive help. Well, right now with everything that concerns me, because right now with everything that we're going through, I think everyone is going to probably at some point be giving some help, and everyone is going to have to be asking for or receiving help. And so I think we can be both. We don't have to be either or. And I can be emotional and I can be strong. So I've had people say things like, I'm so falling apart, I'm so emotional. And yet I look at them in their lives and they're moving forward and they're very strong about everything. Well, just because you're having emotion doesn't mean you're not strong.
Yeah.
This is an emotional time. We're going to have emotion. So
yeah.
Anyway, so you wanted to talk about the neuroscience behind.
Validation. And
yeah.
It's interesting because, I mean, when we think of the word validation, right? I always, whenever I'm in a conversation with someone, I always try to see the gift in them, and I do see it. I mean, it's powerful when I see who they are, and I validate. I try to validate, and sometimes though people don't receive it well, right? And part of it is, and I'll tell you the reason why I do this is because I lost my father early on, right? And I never got a chance. One of the great regrets I have is that I assumed he knew my thoughts about him, and but it was only I never got to really say to him, I'm proud of all of his accomplishments. I just loved him for doing all of this stuff. It wasn't an easy conversation for me. I would always hold it back, and once he passed away, I decided, life is too short. If I see something and I see it's a gift, it's something that's something to be lifted up or lauded, I will say to you, this is great. You're wonderful. this is beautiful, or I'd say something, and sometimes people react to it differently because they don't necessarily they think they think of it almost like a sales type of pitch, and I'm not meaning it to be that way. So I know people struggle with validation. I know I do. I mean, sometimes when somebody says something about something that I'm doing good, I sometimes I it's hard to sometimes sit there and receive it, but I have to, and I'm grateful for it. And then, but I always turn it around a little bit too. So I struggle with it too. So
Right. Yes. Yes. When you're talking about really seeing a person, and that is a form of validation, when you really see someone, and sometimes the things that we see in people are things that, people, my experience has been that people almost become angry when we see the positives in them. Some of the most challenging groups I've had through my career have been when I've had clients in the group specifically receive positive feedback from other folks.
why
They
is
because I think there are a lot of deep beliefs that folks hold about themselves, whether or not they may deserve the positive feedback, or maybe they don't trust it, or it can be a complex thing, and it can vary from person to person, but it's important to be able to, we can give and receive. We can do both. And I think by doing so, it helps people to grow in a way. It's not just being selfish to receive like that. I mean, I think then it's transactional, right? It helps you to grow in a way where then you're giving differently.
Yeah.
And it comes back. It comes back to others. It comes back to people around you. And so, yeah, that's interesting. Because did you say too, did I hear you correctly when you said that when there's deep listening that happens, that God is present?
I think so. I believe so. I mean, I think what happens when there's deep listening, people actually see each other. One of the commandments that Jesus says, Jesus tells us, which is a summary of the law: love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. So to love means, for me, to see the person, to hear the person, to see the person from their point of view, to understand them.
Yes.
And so that's an act of God. That's sacred ground for me.
Wow. Okay. Well, you just defined validation. You just defined validation, to see the world from the other person's perspective. That's exactly how I'm defining validation. Now, I'm not defining it as agreeing. I'm not saying, people often, two things that reactions I get about validation. One is, that's psychobabble. I mean, maybe don't use that word, but that's the look I get. You want me to talk like a therapist now? People are not going to listen to me. They're going to think I sound like a therapist. That's psychobabble. That's a waste of time. I just want to get right to the point. Why do I have to be polite or overly polite? Why can't I just point out exactly what I see going on? Why do I have to validate someone and try to understand their perspective? My way is the right way. I mean, you name it. And so there are all sorts of reasons why folks try not to validate. And yet, including myself, when I think back to when, as a young mother, and my child would be upset, and I would get into the power struggles, because, this is the time of the day when we get ready for bed, and you need to brush your teeth, and you need to put your pajamas on, and there would be the power struggle there, and the meltdown. And then finally she would say, "Mama, I just want you to hold me." Right? And I'd say, "God, why didn't I think of that to begin with?" We could have avoided this whole huge upset. She, even as a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, she was feeling something that she needed me to acknowledge. She needed me to try to see through her eyes what was going on. And when we do that, the irony is, when we take the time to do that, we end up saving so much more time. That's the other irony. Yes. Because when we validate someone up front like that, and we try to see it from their perspective, they are able to regulate because they can put words on what they're feeling. And when we put words on what we're feeling, we access a part of the brain called the frontal cortex, which helps to regulate the emotional parts of the brain. So if you shut someone down and you don't let them say how they're feeling, because you're nervous that this is going to escalate, it's the opposite. When you shut people down, that makes them escalate because they learn the only way I'm going to be heard is if I really lose it.
Okay.
And so they develop these extreme ways of either totally shutting off and not saying anything about emotion or just losing it entirely. And so this whole thing about validation and allowing for emotion is so important. And so with children right now too, and I've been watching different webinars with child psychologists speaking about answering questions for families. And what keeps coming up over and over again is this whole idea of validation, validating, allowing for people to express how it is that they're feeling. Now, once you do that, again, it's not saying if someone has a lot of emotion and they're also engaging in a behavior that's not helpful or destructive, you're not validating the behavior. You're validating, you can understand how they might have felt frustrated. And then once they calm down, then you can calmly talk about, well, what do you think we can do differently next time? How might we be able to handle this differently? And so, we like to say, validate and set the limit.
Yeah. You're making me think, and that's why I'm kind of quiet at this moment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about also, so when you're talking, I could see this not only with children, but with adults.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, I guess I'm talking primarily about children, and I'm talking because also what's on my mind is my daughter had mentioned that she has friends in her 20s. And the thing about this pandemic is we could very easily get into this whole comparison thing, like who has it worse.
Yeah.
And really, it's tough on everyone, and everyone has their own different circumstances, their own life experiences that they bring to this situation. Someone who's had more struggles and gotten through some really tough times, in some ways, this may be not as bad. In other ways, if someone hasn't had as much life experience, this may be really terrifying. Or you have someone who's working on the front line, seeing things, or you have people who are alone and bored, or you have people who are experiencing financial struggles. There are so many different situations, I think, but we need to validate everyone's particular situation. And so if we have young adults, and I was thinking back to when I was 20 and in my 20s, and that was such a tough time. It was so hard. I didn't really know what I wanted to do or where my life was going. And so these folks, these young adults, I think they're at risk maybe and sometimes becoming depressed. And so it's important to also kind of validate everyone's different experiences. And by doing that, they will feel heard. They will be able to access their feelings and their emotions. That will help them to regulate. And then, believe it or not, folks tend to be much better problem solvers too. Then they'll start to think about maybe steps they can take.
Sure. So I'm wondering about when you're talking to someone, like say your 2-year-old kid who wants the hug, who really just wants to be with you, but you need to get them to bed. You need to get them to all of that. And so the question is, and not just the 2-year-old kid, but the adult who sees their point of view and who's struggling in frustration with this new reality. And how do you get them to move forward? Or and you need to move the whole community. I'm talking about me. Move the whole community. And how do you validate them, listen to them, understand them, but still kind of take the steps to move forward?
Right. I mean, I think it definitely starts with validation. When people feel validated, they will be more likely to take those steps, and you'll be less likely to get into a power struggle with them. And then you can model, or may help them problem solve, engage in a conversation. Once they calm down and they feel heard, so what are your thoughts about what maybe we could try? And that's where then you can maybe apply some of the things that I've been talking about on the program to, like a growth mindset, or design principles, getting out, having conversations with people, networking, depending on whatever the situation is. So yeah, I think that's
so validation includes, it's not just validating in order to get people to feel better, to get what you want, but rather to open conversations. And you still have to be open to the possibility that once you're able to see people from their point of view, your mindset might change, your vision might change as well.
It's transactional, right? Too. Yeah. By hearing, understanding their perspective, it can change your perspective, and vice versa. Absolutely. And then together, you can work together to try to help engage in a conversation. Now, keep in mind that things don't always happen in an ideal fashion either. We can try our best. And for instance, and my daughter gave me full permission. We had a conversation yesterday on Mother's Day. She said, "Mom, you can share different examples using me in terms of our skills and how we've grown together." So I just want to be clear about that, because she likes the story part. But for years, like a lot of moms, I would try to have more structure and say things, especially because of my field. You need to be exercising, eating regularly, have structure, all these things. And she'd say, "Yeah, okay, Mom, yeah, I get it. Well, right now she is in England with her boyfriend's family in sheltering in place, and God bless his mother, because I feel so grateful to have her there watching over her. But so she said, "Mom, you never believe this, but we all get up at 9, we have breakfast, we eat at 12, we eat dinner at 5 or whatever. We all take a walk at a certain time, and I've never felt better." Right?
Right. I know where you're going with this, because I did.
And I was like, of course, because you wouldn't listen to your mother, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, honey, I've been trying to do that for all of your life. I know that feeling at home.
And we were laughing about it, but I think that is also one of the things about being a parent too. You do the best you can. And I think probably trying to model things, and to her, in her defense, partly too, maybe sometimes those have been some of my struggles too.
Yeah, no.
And so maybe I've been frustrated because sometimes we have to look at ourselves too. When you want your kid to clean their room and you're on them all the time, have you really shown them how to do it? Or is that something you also kind of struggle with?
Yeah. And I think also, in my mind also, God prepares us, to be able to listen or to access the wisdom at certain times in our life when we're needed,
Yes, that's true too for all of us, right? I mean, I can remember going through many of those times where, it's like that expression, the teacher will arrive when the student is ready.
Yes.
So sometimes as a parent, we're planting seeds, and maybe we can't really see the results yet. But maybe and for ourselves too, I may hear a message in different ways, and I really don't act on it until I'm ready in some ways too. So.
Yeah. Sharon, this is it's always great talking to you. I mean, the time is going so fast. It's already a half hour, but I really appreciate your coming with us. You'll be back in 2 weeks, on a Monday. And that time we're going to be talking about the tools, I think. What was we were.
Yeah. So how do we achieve emotional stability? Because people who have good coping skills, this is a crisis. It's like people who have coping skills are going to be more likely to have the kind of emotional stability that's going to help them to sort of have good decision making during this time. And how we navigate this time and how we are during this time is important to how we come out of this time.
Yes.
And so I think maybe sort of outlining some of those kinds of things. And I also want to say too that May is Mental Health Awareness as well. And just as also, you and I had mentioned too, that if folks are interested in looking for a therapist, you can go to Psychology Today and type in psychologytoday.com. Thank you. And you can type in your zip code and any kind of things you want to filter for, and different, you can read about different therapists who are available. And then of course there's RICBT, where I work as well.
And you're starting a support group for COVID, a COVID group too.
COVID-19. It's more of a group for folks who are in general struggling with things like telecommuting or balancing family and work, loneliness. If you're a first responder and having more significant kind of things, where we are thinking about trying to start up a group for that as well. So yeah. Good
things, good stuff. Again, thank you. I'm grateful for your friendship, Sharon.
Yes, well, Father Sunil, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Folks, thank you again for joining us. I know that there are people from all over, not only in our region, but all over the nation and internationally. I just noticed that one of my mentors, Bishop Thomas Samuel, just got into the discussion a bit too. Thank you, Bishop, for being with me. He was my parish priest when I was a young person, and I'm so grateful that we're connecting through this Facebook Live program. So again, we are here. We do this program because we are in the midst of this COVID-19 challenge, and so we end up our session with this prayer. And so let us pray together. Jesus Christ, you traveled through towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now, in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health through quality medical care. Heal us from our fear, which prevents nations from working together and neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support the medical professionals, emergency responders, teachers and students, counselors, and our caregivers. We ask this all in your name. Amen. Join with me in the Lord's Prayer, friends. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, thank you again for joining us today. There are many things that we offer in our community, of course, through our Christ Church. And one of the things that is very interesting that I want to make an announcement is that we're going to be doing a virtual coffee hour. And so you could find out information on our website or even on our Facebook site. And if you'd like to join us, please do. It's going to be a wonderful experience. We do have an experience also of trivia as well. And Ben Barber has supported this, and he's helping us arrange it. Zoom Trivia Night, which is Monday, May 18th at 6 p.m. It was a fun time last time, and I hope that those of you who'd like to join us can and will. But in the midst of all of this, be sure, my friends, to relish in you and spread that light to the world around it. It needs it right now. Thank you. Bye.